Hello creation, hope you're well. I've just written this. It's called Solitude Brings Soul Cultivation. Do you not want change in this world of selfish illusion? Are you still buying into the laughable expectance of those who trade in delusion? Do you depend upon acceptance and compliance that society demands? Do you realise that the happiest of futures lay within your own hands? When you awaken to your power, do you no longer place yourself in need? From the seed to the sapling to the fullness of the tree? Vital in the journey when one places self apart, 'tis a move of much importance that helps cleanse the soul and heart. To welcome in seclusion proves of one's own duty of care, when solitude of the non-solitary in societal circles is seen as rather rare. Yet this is of such importance for the soul and its progression, and can be viewed by the status quo as an individual transgression. This is also part of the realization process in the awakening of the observer, who no longer lets one's self get wrapped up in the fervour. Freed from a world of blah 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 that unfortunately to many does make sense, placed in a universal position to receive that which must be recompensed. A fullness and acceptance of the soul rejuvenation is greeted by the soul itself with the sweetest recognition. Then they will all witness the birthing of the Master Manifester, sitting upon the throne of life, no longer the lowly court jester. When we look back at our lives, when we look back at the versions of ourselves that we have been, and when we look back at, you can go back to when you were a child, you can look back to when you were a child, you can look back at how you were treated, how you behaved, how you were moulded, you can see it now, how the pressures of peers were put upon you, for you not always to do your best, not always to do your best, depending on what circumstances you were in. But when you can look back and you see your life journey in particular, I can only go by mine, but when you can see all the different versions that you've been throughout your whole life, when you can see what you've achieved in being, in still being here, if you get to, into your, however old it, if you're sort of above 50, and when you look, there's plenty to look at. There's plenty to look at in your journey of life, with your relationships, with your, be that professional relationships or, friendships, relationships as in, intimate relationships. And when you can look, because we learn from all of those, we're always learning from others. So when you can look back and you can see the journey that you've sort of the path that you've walked, and when you can look back and you realise exactly how far you've come. Wow. You can have a wow moment. Wow. No, seriously. Obviously depending on the life that you've had. Some have had more busier lives than others, I don't doubt. But in saying that, when you can look back and you realise how far you've come and what you've actually achieved in your life. But I think the icing on the cake for me personally is the refinding, rediscovering, doing all the healing that had to be done to find myself living in every moment, and very rarely venturing into the past. I was just talking about this with some of my closest friends today, and we're saying about we can spend time looking back, or there are people who still look back in the past, they live in the past, or they're worrying about what goes off in the future. And this was as discussion today, and how we miss the moment by doing that. We miss the moment. And these days I find myself in the moment, nearly always in the moment, unless something does need revisiting, if something does crop up or whatever. But it's wonderful to be 99.9% of the time in the moment, because when you're there, that shows how you've, for one, let the past go, because and that must be a sign as well that you've predominantly healed from it. Because when you've not healed from the past, you're constantly visiting it, or when you've not let something go, you're constantly visiting it, if you're clinging on to something. So to find myself not thinking about the past virtually the whole time is absolutely wonderful, and I feel great in here. Yeah. So, and that poetic written word that's just come through is just about the journey, isn't it? And it's about the solitude that's been absolutely vital in it really is. It's the chrysalis, isn't it? It's the chrysalis stage before we flourish. and we emerge as the butterfly, a beautiful butterfly. Well, not that beautiful, but anyway. So, and this is it. This is what life is all about. It's a journey. And I feel awesome. That's it, really. So I wanted to share that with you. I have called it Solitude Brings Soul Cultivation. Maybe I should just call it Butterfly Transformation. The beautiful butterfly. Let's call it that instead. Alright. Right, that's it for now. Take care.